Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities.
One of the biggest selling albums of all time when it first came out, Phantom Comes Alive. And we're going to show you the way into the weekend of sports here on the Mac and Jack Sports Show with our guest Keith Angle. Comes in every Friday and Sunday to be with us, give us some great updates in college and professional football. Keith got it all. Very smart in everything as far as sports go. In fact, he's already given us information before we go on the show. So
I was actually wrong. They did play together, Jack, by the way. They did play at OSU together.
Right. Oh, yeah. What Keith has mentioned before the show, I asked him whether or not Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson, the Jet receiver, played together at Ohio State, because all the time I'm going through my mind about the Jets quarterback situation for next year. Justin Fields is going to be a free agent. Imagine the Jets sign him and he could hook up with Garrett Wilson, who's shown a little discontent, as a Jets wide receiver. So, we do talk sports before the show. Everyone out there should understand. We actually like sports, Mac. It's not just business to Keith and myself. We actually love sports.
This happens at my real job. They say, can we talk about work and stops talking about sports for a little while? So
there you go. So that's why I have you two on, because you do both care about sports. I wouldn't have you on if you didn't. So anyway, last night I had the pleasure of interviewing one of my favorite hosts on the network, Nate Schmidt. He's the host of Man Coverage. Nashville Nate. And he won a huge Ohio State fan. He actually played college at Ohio, not at Ohio State, a smaller college there, but he did play football there. So a little bit higher than me and most people that host the programs here. And he knows a lot about college football. He's not just into Ohio State. He has some kind words to say about Notre Dame, even, Keith. So it was interesting to have a talk.
Nate called me. Nate's not afraid. I like Nate because he's not afraid to call me out. He did early in the year when Nebraska, I didn't say Nebraska was back. He said I said that, but I said they were relevant again. They're barely even relevant. So he was actually right. Nate's called me out on a few things. So God bless him. I like people who keep me in line.
Yes. And he really didn't say too much to me because I was interviewing him and let him do most of the talking. So he didn't have to keep me in check too much. But we did talk about the Ohio State head coach, Ryan Day. And I didn't realize until I looked it up that Ryan Day is 70-10 as the head coach of Ohio State, which is a heck of a record. Even the former athletic director, Gene Smith, says he's great. It's a great program. And no players are getting in trouble like in the past And of course, that was kind of a swipe at the former head coach there that, was a little bit different. He went on to coach, of course, Florida. But he did say that Ryan Day really cared about the kids, and this is what the AD said. And of course, Nate agreed with that. He thinks Ryan Day is going to be a coach here for a few years, Keith.
Maybe. The problem with those 10 losses is 4 of them are against Michigan. That's the big issue with Ryan Day. Again, this national championship gets the monkey off his back until they lose to Michigan again. And then
what?
Back on him.
He's the national championship.
I get
His
it.
job security shouldn't even be discussed in the next 3-4 years. I don't care if he loses to Michigan the next couple of years. His job security shouldn't be a question. National champion. This is insane.
I would agree 100%, Jack. The problem is those types of rivalries take on a life of their own, and it will matter. It'll buy him more than that loss. But those same people that were on Ryan Day will be on Ryan Day if he loses a 5th time in a row to Michigan. It's just the way those rivalries are. That's one of the things I love about college football. Not that maybe Ryan Day ought to lose his job, just that those people, writers, fan bases, alumni, are so passionate about those rivalries. And that's one thing we're starting to kind of lose a little bit in college football because of all the realignment and such. So it's good to me that there's that type of passion left somewhere.
Is that passion or is that kind of stupidity, Keith?
Well,
you got to
as far as wanting to fight a guy who's 70-10 and won a national championship, it's kind of stupid. Yes, stupidity.
Right. I mean, I get it. I get it. I mean, Notre Dame and USC at one time was a huge rivalry, and it was a big deal that Notre Dame beat USC or vice versa. I get that. But if Notre Dame won a national championship and lost to USC, I wouldn't give a darn. I'd be okay, that's fine.
The only 2 rivalries I can think in college football that are this intense is Michigan, Ohio State, and Auburn and Alabama. And that's lost a little luster because Alabama has been so good and Auburn very up and down at best. But, I love those rivalries, but at the same time, they do produce some stupidity, yes. And Ryan Day might get fed up with that nonsense at some point, and some NFL team comes calling, he may take a walk at some point and get ahead of the posse. Who knows? I'm going to guess all those, except the Michigan games, because they weren't all ranked, but I'm going to guess most of those 10 losses were against ranked teams too, because he's lost in the playoff 2 or 3 times. So obviously he's losing the top 10 teams when he loses. So
right.
It's,
I would imagine Ohio State will have some good recruiting this year, especially winning the national championship. Because once you start winning and you're out there, players want to come play for you and they want to get a shot of going to the pros and
always helps. That's why they got wide receivers coming out of every part of their organization, because they know they will move to the next level. I mean, look at the line of succession there has been amazing.
Keith, the early favorites next year, Texas and Ohio State. Has the Alabama chain of favoritism been broken?
For now, right? They got to go back. They've got to prove. And Caleb DeBoer's got to prove that he can be as good or close to as good as Nick Saban, and that program can be as consistent as it's been in the past. They'll be a contender. With a 12-team playoff, they'll be a contender most years. I don't see a huge drop-off where they fall in the middle of the SEC or worse. The question is whether they can get to the top consistently like they were under Saban.
Yeah.
They're still going to get players. I mean, it's Alabama. They're still going to get players.
And there's plenty. I mean, there's plenty of 4 and 5 star, 3, 4, 5 star recruits in high school too. So it's not like the well went dry, right? So I mean, they're going to get. It's just they need a coach to put it together, like the coach of Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, had a great year. I think he was coach of the year in college, or an award similar to that. And Notre Dame, I think, they had 6 injured players that are coming back next year. The quarterback is coming back next year. I think Notre Dame's in pretty good shape for next year, Keith.
I'm not sure. I have to check. I don't think Riley Leonard's back next year. I think he's used up his eligibility. We'll see. I got to check into that. It seems there's loopholes, all the time where he might get a chance to come back for one more year. But they found Riley Leonard in the portal, and Notre Dame has been very active in the portal the last few years. Some more successful than others, obviously. Marcus Freeman has grown a lot, and I was a big Marcus Freeman backer when he was. A lot of people were on him the first 3 years. He wasn't having terrible records. I mean, the worst he's done is like 9 wins in a season. That's not terrible. He's got, if I'm not mistaken, he's got one of the top 2 or 3 best records, in the first 4 years of a career at Notre Dame with any of those coaches. So you've had some pretty storied names come out of there. And he was a young guy. It took him time to grow into this job. And I think he did a tremendous job this year, especially after they lost to Northern Illinois and they really figured out how to run this offense, get Riley Leonard going and use him properly. And they made big steps. They were just, on the field. I don't think he was necessarily out-coached. A lot of people were upset about the 4th down fake punt. It works if a guy catches the ball. So nobody's saying anything if that play's completed. And the execution or the play call was good. The execution was not. And then the field goal. But he didn't get out-coached, I don't think, that night. Ohio State just had better players and more players to throw at that team.
Keith, when you have a 4th and 2, you don't fake a punt. Not at 4th and 2. You have 4th and 9 expecting you to maybe punt because it's hard to pick up that type of yardage, but not at 4th and 2. You don't play games. You just flat out either go for it or punt the ball.
I would normally agree with you. Yes. If you're going to do it, go for it. I don't have a problem going to try to get a first down on 4th down there because they're down 28-7, if I'm not mistaken. They needed a spark.
Ohio State's ready for the fake punt just in case, with a 3-touchdown lead.
But again, if the kid catches the ball, it's a moot point because they got a first down. So I would have gone if I wanted to go for it there. I would have kept my offensive team on. That's my best chance, is to keep my best offensive players on the team, right? So they wanted the element of surprise, and they've gone for it so many times this year. I don't know that there's that much element of surprise when they did it. They needed a spark, so I don't have a problem with them going for it on 4th down specifically.
And of course, Nate did mention that our Notre Dame head coach is from Ohio State, played linebacker.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he had to throw that in there. So,
great Ohio roots for sure. Yeah.
Yes, he does. So, and not for nothing, but our second string quarterback for Notre Dame played pretty well on one of those drives, and he looks like he could be a good quarterback if they work with him. So, we'll see.
He had to come into one of the other playoff games for a drive or two as well when Riley Leonard got banged up. I want to say might have been against Penn State, actually. Riley Leonard, they thought he might have a concussion. He came in and played at least one drive, if not 2, and got Penn State some important points. I'm sorry, Notre Dame some important points at the end of that first half against Penn State when they were reeling a little bit. So he played well. Yeah.
I'm hearing Will Howard might go pro.
I believe Will Howard will. I don't think he's going to be, he'll be a late round selection. But the interesting thing was these 2 quarterbacks were Notre Dame could choose between these 2 quarterbacks basically in the portal last year. They had a choice whether to sign Riley Leonard or Will Howard, and they went the Riley Leonard way. So it's very interesting that those 2 guys end up facing each other in the national championship game. And Will Howard played a great game that day. Especially to start the game, 13 for 13, I think. That really set the tone. After that long Notre Dame drive, Ohio State just came back and took control, especially in the second quarter.
Yes, they did. So let's talk a little bit about the championship games coming up. I mean, we give our picks, folks, on the Sunday Football Show, so tune in for that. We got Washington, who's is getting 6 points at Philadelphia. Everybody thinks Philadelphia's just going to run the ball, which would be a great plan when you have Saquon Barkley. They're going to control the clock, and they're going to win this game pretty easily. I don't know about that, guys. I think that what the Commanders showed in the second game against Philadelphia is that they can come back and they can score a lot of points if they have to. McClure is a good wide receiver. They got a decent running game. And, of course, Jaden Daniels is cool as a cucumber. I mean, this kid doesn't seem to get rattled. So, I don't know if Philly wins. I mean, if Washington wins the game or not, but I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's closer than the 6.
Should I not tip my hand to who I'm picking and wait till Sunday? Is that how I should discuss this game?
Yes.
I think it could be. I think it'll be a closer game than people think. I don't think the Eagles will run away with this. I think Washington's got a puncher's chance. Jaden Daniels has played well in these big games leading up to this biggest game. Everyone's the biggest game of his career now, right? So he's got to keep doing that. He's playing probably the best defense. At least he's played in the playoffs. The Eagles have one of the top defensive teams. They get when they want to play, man. This team can play really, really well. I think this comes down to probably the quarterbacks. I think the Eagles will run the football. Obviously, you get a 2,000-yard runner who's healthy. The offensive line seems to be healthy. I think they try to run the ball, and it's a matter of whether Washington can stop the run, and then it comes down to which quarterback doesn't make mistakes. Washington's got a puncher here for sure.
No, I hear all over about 6 points. Who gives a darn what the point spread is? This game sends a team to the Super Bowl. Do you think there's one Commander fan out there who's going to be smiling if their team lost by 2 points? Oh, well, we covered the point spread, unless they have a bet on it, of course.
That's how much money they have on it, right?
Who gives a darn unless you're betting on the game yourself? I don't get it. Well, we hear it all over, Matt. Every show we hear this on. Well, it's 6 points. I think they can cover. The Super Bowl is on the line here. The Eagles are doing just enough to win these games. I mean, the Ram game, they came precariously close to losing that game. When you think if the Rams were able to keep that last drive going, if the weather conditions not been so bad, the Eagles actually could have lost on 2 touchdown drives at the end of the game. And against the Packers, they didn't play especially well. The Packers just imploded, made mistakes, special teams and other things. And the Eagles are doing enough to win. Are the Eagles ready to turn it up a notch? Is this the Eagle team that is the current Eagle team that's going to show up against the Commanders? Because this Eagle team can be beaten. But if they're ready to take it up a notch, I don't see the Commanders going into Philadelphia and coming that close to winning the game.
Quick point about the point spread that Jack was talking about. When you get to these games, this is totally anecdotal. I'd have to look it up because years ago I knew these numbers, but a lot of years have gone by since I did. But so totally anecdotally, when you get to this point in the season and point spreads don't really matter, as far as winners and losers, the team that wins normally covers. Either the underdog wins, which means they cover, or the favorite will cover by whatever the margin was. So you pick a winner, you've won the spread most of the time. Again, it's totally anecdotal. I'm not positive on that, but I would say the majority of the time that would be true. Especially
I would think in Washington's case, I think it matters to the Washington fans that they play a good game. That the Washington plays a good game because they haven't been there. This is a brand new team, brand new coach, brand new everything. So maybe they're not even supposed to be there. If they get killed, I don't think that I don't think it will be as good for them as if they stay with the Eagles. Now the Eagles is a different story. If the Eagles lose to the Commanders, I think the Philadelphia fans will be upset. I mean, they're supposed to go to the Super Bowl. They're one of the favorites. So I think it does matter.
There's more pressure on the Eagles than there is the Redskins. The Redskins are playing with house money right now, right? So, again, they can play loosey-goosey. If they lose, it's not the end of the world. They want to win, don't get me wrong. I don't think anybody's satisfied, but lost.
I'm going to sound hypocritical here because I talk with Mac about this a lot. Which franchise it means more to, and Mac brings it up, you bring it up. It's more important that for the Eagles franchise and fan base, they go to the Super Bowl than it is to the Commanders. So the Commanders weren't even supposed to be here. Right. But with that said, if you don't get over the top and go to the Super Bowl now, if you're the Commanders, it's so hard to get back into this position. Who knows how good the Commanders are going to be going forward? Yeah, they should be okay. We think now that they're going to be a playoff caliber team, but did they really overachieve? Look at the Packers 1 year ago. We said, they overachieved, and the Packers kind of leveled out this year. They didn't take it, the next step. And maybe that'll be the Commanders next season, because look at all the teams in the NFC that are supposedly going to be in the mix next year. And at best, they're just one of several teams. When you have a chance to go to the Super Bowl, you better take advantage of it. You better get over the top, because you might not get that chance again unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs, of course.
That's a great point, too, because, again, it takes a lot to get here. And when the window's open, you don't know how long it'll be open. I always go back to Dan Marino. Dan Marino got to the Super Bowl the second year, and they lost fairly handily to the 49ers. And everybody thought, well, he'll be back a bunch of times. Never got back.
Well, the Eagles were there a couple of years ago, so they are on their way back if they win, right? They're back there. They got a good team. They got a good coaching staff. They took a step back last year. They lost their offensive and defensive coordinator. I don't think Washington's losing their offensive and defensive coordinator this year. I think they're all in it. They're all into it. Well, possibly, but I haven't heard no rumors at all about him, Keith. So I think pretty much it's going to be the same team next year, only a year older, and maybe a couple free agents better, or maybe a draft pick better. I think Washington for the next few years at least is going to be a team that's going to have to be reckoned with. I don't see any other team besides Philadelphia in the next couple of years that are going to be able to stay with them. So I think Washington's in a really good spot if you're a Washington Commander fan. Well, I had Commander Nash on NFL Download. He said, I expected it the most 10-7. I didn't expect this. So the fans are already happy. So I think that this is going to be a fun game, and I ain't counting Washington out. But as we all know, they got to stop the running game, and that's not going to be easy.
The Washington team, the fans probably thought the same thing when they got to the playoffs and won a playoff game with RG3 too, and that didn't work out too well afterwards. So again, you never know what's going to happen down the road, as Jack says. Yeah. Things are so fluid in the league today that a lot of things change fast.
RG3 RG3 is a different circumstance, right? The coach, he got hurt. Coach kept playing him. He got hurt more. That was ridiculous. So,
that's my point.
I mean, that was just a bad.
Yeah.
I think that head coach sucked. So anyway, go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
No, for the people who are picking Washington, don't think Jaden Daniels is going to take the team, put them on their back, and lead them to victory against the Eagles. The Eagles are too good of a team. I mean, anything could happen during the game, turnovers, special teams, etc., etc. But if you look at the personnel of the Eagles and the Commanders, the Eagles are clearly better. The Eagles should win the game. You have to win it on the field, but the Eagles are clearly better. And Jaden Daniels isn't the second coming of Patrick Mahomes yet. Let's not get carried away. He's been outstanding for a rookie, should have a great future in the league. But let's not get carried away. He's not in the top few quarterbacks yet. You could say he's top 10 right now, Jaden Daniels, if you want. But let's not get carried away what I'm saying with Jaden Daniels, where he's going to take the Commanders and just carry them to victory.
We got Buffalo, which is basically a pick now at Kansas City. Of course, all the which I'd love to get Keith going with all the referee talk. There's all kinds of things going on with that. I'm going to leave that alone, Keith. I'm not going to talk about the refs today because believe it or not, there's been
before the show, so I wouldn't go off.
There's been more roughing passers against Josh Allen than there has been against Patrick Mahomes. I think he has 40 and Patrick Mahomes has 38. So I mean,
that's two. Not like a definitive number.
Well, it is something, right? I mean, so nobody's crying about those against Josh Allen.
Well, that's kind of my point, but that's I agree. Thank you for that, Mac.
Yeah, you're welcome. Listen, you got Buffalo, who I think it's going to be on Josh Allen's back to pretty much carry their team against Kansas City, especially against that defense. He's going to have to run the ball. He's going to have to throw the ball. Josh Allen, I mean, you got Cook, but Josh Allen makes that team go. KC's defense is a great defense. Buffalo's passing defense is really good, so that might help them against Patrick Mahomes. We'll see. But listen, I think this could go either way. I really do. I mean, I'll pick somebody for Sunday, but I think this game goes either way.
Yeah. I said the other night, and I've said it for a couple of years, the Kansas City defense has been underrated throughout their Super Bowl, this run they've had. And before, they would bend, but they don't break. They give up points, right? But this team's not going to outscore teams. Patrick Mahomes is still a really good quarterback, and he makes big plays at big times, but he's not putting up the gaudy numbers, and he doesn't need to. This defense keeps them in games for them to be able to come back or stay ahead and win close games. I think if Buffalo gets to 28, say, that Kansas City's in trouble here. I think this needs to be 2017, something like that, for Kansas City to win. And I won't give you my pick because Mac told me not to. But I think both teams have a chance here. Again, we talk about windows, and a lot of people thought, I necessarily hadn't jumped off the Buffalo bandwagon this year, but a lot of people thought their window had already closed. It's still wide open, but how long will it be there? To Jack's earlier point, you've got to start taking advantage of these chances eventually.
Well, you mentioned the Kansas City defense. How come Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, hasn't gotten any job interviews, the head coaching interviews? I know he had a head coaching, job before with the Rams. It didn't quite work out when they were St. Louis Rams.
Yeah.
But you'd think Spagnuolo would get, some type of interview somewhere with the job he's done as the chief defensive coordinator.
Well, one of the problems, again, with guys like Spagnuolo, and we talked about Kingsbury earlier, the problem is the longer your team plays, the more difficult it becomes to get a job, too, because you can only interview virtually once up until now. And Spagnuolo was kicked around. His name was kicked around early in this coaching. What's the word I want to use? Carousel. Thank you. But it's kind of dried up since, because I think teams haven't been able to chat about him. Positions are starting to get filled, and he could still get interviewed once they are finally out. But that's a lot. When you're on a good team, it's harder to get a job sometimes because teams don't want to wait until mid-February to make that hire. So he's a good coach. He didn't have a great run with the Rams. I think he had an interim run too with the Saints. Was it? I don't even remember who it was. Maybe it was.
Well, the Raid and Saint jobs are open now. I believe those are the only two jobs the Las Vegas Raiders.
Dallas too.
Brian Schottenheimer seems to be.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that.
It's not official, but
that's amazing. I would think
Schottenheimer is a boring hire, but it's not a bad hire. People want the big names up there, but Brian Schottenheimer is fine compared to the other names. He's not glitzy, he's not eye-catching, but he's okay.
Back to Spagnuolo for a second. Listen, he's in a great spot too, and I guarantee you, he's probably one of the highest-paid coordinators in the NFL. Guessing, it's a matter of whether his ego wants to say, "I want to go prove I can do this." If not, he's in a good spot, and he might just stick it out there as long as Andy Reid sticks around. Why
not? I mean, he just did sign, I think, an extension last year. He is one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid defensive coordinators in the league. And why ruin a good thing? I mean, we saw what happened with Bieniemy, right? I mean, he left. I don't think he's coaching anywhere anymore.
He swore he wasn't getting jobs because he was in the shadow of Andy Reid, and actually, maybe that's where all of his prowess came from. So
I'm going to tell you what hurt Bieniemy too. He went to the Commanders, and even though Jaden Daniels wasn't there, as soon as Bieniemy left, they took off. Even though he didn't have Jaden Daniels, unfortunately for Bieniemy, could you imagine Jaden Daniels did come a year early, and he had this success under Bieniemy? Bieniemy would have been the hottest coaching candidate. They go, wow. Look what he did for Daniels. He probably played a big role in Patrick Mahomes being the quarterback he was. Teams would have been all over Bieniemy to hire him had he been, the offensive coordinator during this Jaden Daniels run.
He's been one of those hot guys before, and I don't know if he doesn't interview well. They hold stuff against him from years ago at Colorado.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. There's something that's held him back, and I just – he would have had a job by now if he was going to get one.
Yes, I was going to say both, Keith. Interview well, and the Colorado stuff still follows him around. Last I knew he was in college, he got fired from there. So anyway, Buffalo versus Kansas City should be a real good game. Let's talk about the Jets hiring Aaron Glenn, former Jet, a player, which gives him a little bit of credibility with the players on the team. He's been around a little bit, did a good job, especially regular season, as the Lions defensive coordinator. I think Glenn is a culture or a chemistry kind of coach. I don't know if he's an X and O head coach. I think he's going in to change the culture there, because let's face it. If you take last year's Jets team, they're a very talented team. Their wide receivers, their running backs, their defense, they're all very good. And I think a lot of teams would take any of those players on their teams. Even Aaron Rodgers had a pretty good year for Aaron Rodgers. It might be average for him, but for other quarterbacks, he had a good year. I think that this is going to be a big thing, whether they keep Rodgers, whether they move on. And I think Aaron Glenn is that no-nonsense kind of coach, coming from the Parcells, working under Parcells when he was a player at the Jets. I think that this is what they hired Aaron Glenn for.
I agree. Culture, they need to change the culture, and I think that's a big part of this. He's a big part of the Jet history for whatever it is. He was a great player, or very good player. He's been a decent defensive coordinator. That Detroit defense is not as good as people think it is. I know they had a lot of injuries, but still. What surprises me the most about, a couple things surprises me about this. The Jets continued. Usually teams will, they go offense, if they go, assistant coaches or coordinators, they tend to maybe go for an established guy after that. This is like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hires in a row where the Jets have gone with the hot assistant, and it hasn't really worked out. A little bit under Eric Mangini, I guess. Todd Bowles, and all defensive guys too, when you think about it. All defensive guys. I can't think of an offensive guy in New York since Bruce Coslett. Maybe I'm wrong, but Jack might remember somebody in between. But that approach hasn't worked. The assistant and hot defensive coordinator has not worked for the Jets, but they keep repeating the same mistakes. And maybe this won't be a mistake, but I thought they would have changed it up a little bit here.
Well, Aaron Glenn has a 5-year contract, so he's secure. But normally you hire the GM first. And I'm not saying give the GM the authority to hire the coach. I want the owners to be involved. It's their team. As long as it's not a crazy owner who's overly involved, who nitpicks on things, the owners should be involved. So you hire GM if you're the owner, and you work along with the GM to get a coach who both you and the GM are compatible with. And so now they're going to hire GM. What happens if he and Aaron Glenn don't see eye to eye? The GM drafts certain players that Aaron Glenn might not be crazy about. Aaron Glenn might not want to play him as much as the GM wants them to play, and you immediately have friction. You need a GM and coach who are really on the same page. And you're not guaranteed to get it here because the owner went out, he hired the coach first, which I think is a decent hiring. It's a fresh new face. And look at the other candidates who were there. You really want a Mike McCarthy coming in, I didn't, in all actuality, even though I understand you could have linked him with Aaron Rodgers. What you said, Mac, about Aaron Rodgers having a good year, compared to the average quarterback, I'm not even that sure about that. He was statistically maybe, but he was so. The talk was that a year ago, Aaron Glenn thought Aaron Rodgers might have a lot left. We don't know what Aaron Glenn thinks of Aaron Rodgers. How come word hasn't come out yet? Would the Jets be better off looking at Justin Fields? Or what happens if Shedeur Sanders drops to the Jets at number 7, which is a possibility? Do they take Shedeur Sanders and make him their franchise quarterback? Keith could answer that better than I could.
No, they probably will. I don't think Shedeur Sanders should get picked in the top 10, but that's a different story. He will, just because teams reach all the time when they're desperate.
That's a number 7. That's your top 10. The mighty fall for the Jets at number 7.
I think it's anything's possible. We see crazy stuff on draft day all the time. Everything I'm seeing, it doesn't look like he will, unless between now and draft day and teams talking to him. He hasn't talked to anybody yet, right? Once teams start interviewing guys, opinions change, and that could drop him. But if the draft were to happen tomorrow, he'd be a top 5 pick probably. And that's not me saying he should be. I'm saying he will be.
I think so.
I get the feeling.
The Jets could trade up to get him too if they really wanted him that bad.
Good.
Yeah. Listen, listen. Aaron Glenn is a former Jet. I think that carries a lot of weight. Aaron Glenn's going to help pick the GM. He's going to have some say in the GM.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not like they're going to go behind his back and pick somebody like they did in Chicago and just throw him in there. So I think that this is going to be as best as the Jets can do right now. And I think he's going to be a good coach. He may not have him in a Super Bowl in a couple of years, but I think the Jets get competitive again. And who do they really got in that division that's going to be competitive with Buffalo? But the Jets. I mean, I don't. Good, because we're gonna talk about the Patriots next. But I think, listen, the Jets are probably going to be the second best team in the East next year.
I agree with you about the Glenn's gonna, and everything I've read. He's not gonna pick the GM, but he's gonna have some say. He's gonna have some say in that pick. And it is kind of backwards the way teams normally do it. I would do it the other way myself. But they're not, as you said, they're not going to throw a guy in there that he just doesn't know or have any say in. And as far as the Aaron Rodgers and why he hasn't spoken up about him, he's not going to speak about Aaron Rodgers until they decide what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to say a word that he's got to take back later on. Guaranteed.
The comment about the Jets using a tight end, I mean, Tyler Conklin at tight end isn't bad, but they missed the bus already on the tight end. Brock Bowers was available last year, and, they didn't draft him. So what could I tell you?
Hey, listen, there's been really good tight ends in the last few drafts. Detroit got one, Minnesota got one, and now the Raiders got one. There are some really good tight ends in college football right now, too. So to the Patriots, Josh McDaniels back as offensive coordinator. Keith wasn't a great head coach. It happens. But he's back there with Vrabel now. What do you see that Josh McDaniels can do with Drake May?
I think it's a good move. I wasn't a big fan of Van Pelt myself. May did make some progress this year, so I'll give him credit for that. But we got to fix that offensive line and get him some weapons, right? I mean, Josh McDaniels is a really good offensive coordinator. But for all the people who want to bash Bill Belichick for never winning without Tom Brady, McDaniel's never been a good offensive coordinator without Tom Brady either. So we got to find out whether he is. I think he is. I think he can change the scheme a little bit, even if the offensive line isn't going to get, which it's not going to make major leaps. I don't think in one season. He can draw up schemes that will help protect May a little bit, and hopefully they've found ways in the past. Again, with 12 back there, not 10, any of the 10s, to win with inferior weapons on the outside. I mean, Josh McDaniel and offensive coordinators before him and after him have found a way to win with lesser talented skill position players. But again, Tom Brady makes those guys better. This is Drake May. All in all, I think it's a good hire. For Vrabel, he needed a strong guy on the offensive side of the football, and you're not going to do better than his pedigree as a coordinator. His head coaching record doesn't matter at all to me. If you're a good coordinator, you're a good coordinator, and that doesn't mean you're going to be a good head coach. We've seen that hundreds of times.
And Vrabel was a play on the Patriots when McDaniels was the coordinator, so that's that familiarity, that big-time relationship. Yep. They'll be on the same page. I think it's a great hire because of that.
That's important. Culture is going to matter. The culture change in this organization and that locker room needs to happen. And that's the biggest thing Vrabel's going to bring to this team is a culture change and accountability, and which is lacking the last year and maybe even the last year of Belichick a little bit. So I think they're heading in the right direction. I don't know that we're going to go from 4 wins to 10. We'll talk more about that in August. But we got to see what kind of moves they got. They got a lot of money to spend. We'll see what they do with it. But I'm excited as a Patriot fan. I'm excited. for the first time in a while, I see some real a chance that light I see at the end of the tunnel isn't a train, right? So,
And you wouldn't have had this level of excitement had Gerard Mayo stayed on for second year. Is that correct?
I wouldn't, because again, I wouldn't see a chance to make a giant leap or any kind of leap. Let's say giant leap is probably out of the question, but you never know in today's NFL. But yeah, I wouldn't have the same level of optimism as I have today, just because last year was so dour. This is just that they were bad. They were boring bad. His demeanor was bad. He didn't hold guys accountable. The penalties were awful to watch. Watching games was just not a great experience. I'm going to have a much different experience, at least talking today before the game starts. Game doesn't start. I'm excited. That may change in a month into the season. I don't know, but today I am.
Well, listen, mistakes like that, penalties and stuff, of course, is you have to blame coaching for that. Any kind of situational football that's not done right, clock management. All that comes into coaching.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
agreed. And there's a lot of that. That doesn't take talent, right? Not to commit penalties, not to make stupid delay game penalties, and not able to get off the the field on third down because of silly penalties. That's not lack of talent. That's lack of coaching.
Yes, I agree with that, Keith. So I know Frank Laterzo is going to be happy since Miami extended Mike McDaniel, the Miami Dolphin head coach. I don't get it. Maybe him and the GM are really tight, or him and the owner are really tight. I don't get it. Miami, to me, is under played, or hasn't played up to expectations or up to their talent level for the last few years. So I don't understand why they're having him extended.
Well, they were a playoff team a year ago, in all fairness. They had a poor year this year, being 8-9. Disappointing. Tua was out. Had Tua been healthy, they would have been a game or two better.
Well, he hasn't won a playoff game, and he does have he's got a lot of talent on the offensive side of the football that, hasn't really gotten over the hump. And whether he should get fired or not is one thing. Getting an extension is a totally different thing. I have asked for like a year and a half now why we never hear his name, and coaches on the hot seat. We never hear his name as coaches on the hot seat, and he never seems to get over the hump. He's a guy, I have a feeling, again, another really good coordinator, we're going to find out, that just could never get over the top as a head coach.
Matt mentions the receivers. There's a rumor about Tyreek Hill maybe going to the Patriots. I don't see how that happens. Why would Miami want to trade Tyreek Hill within their own division unless they were going to get a nice return? And I can't see what the Patriots would give them.
There's a lot of things there, right? The same division, unlikely, because you're not going to want to get killed twice a year by a guy you let go. Patriots don't have much to give up except draft picks, which are not going to do. Plus, they're not going to pay him that kind of money. They don't pay wide receivers that kind of money. They pay quarterbacks and head coaches. They don't pay anybody else. So I don't see that happening. Maybe somewhere else, but not the Patriots.
You can throw character and attitude in there too, and that's not one of his best qualities. Is off field, even on field.
I would like to add about McDaniel, though. I do have one of my pant legs pulled up today in his honor, just so you know.
Okay. No sandals, though.
No sandals, just a pant leg way up. That's all. I don't get it. I mean, I watch him all the time, and I say to my wife, he looks like he's like going out to the backyard to lay in a chaise lounge with a beer. Well, maybe I should.
They do these interviews at the half before the coaches can go to the locker room in all sports where they interview them, and the coaches smile and do this. But the second the interview ends, you see the smile leave their face and they rush off. Like it's obvious they didn't want to be there for the interview. But you get the feeling with McDaniel, he wouldn't mind sticking around an extra minute to talk. He's a happy-go-lucky guy.
I agree. You know what? He's quirky. I'll call him quirky, right?
Which we like. Listen, he's endearing as long as he's a good coach. There's not evidence that he's not a good coach. He hasn't been a bad coach all in all. If you look at his body of work, he hasn't been a bad coach.
It reminds me Reminds me a little bit of a Jason Garrett kind of guy, right? I mean, if he gets to 500 and stuff, we're doing it. You make a playoff every now and then, okay, everything's good. But yeah, he's got to have a great relationship with the owner. He's got to, because I'll tell you right now, if I'm the owner and I got Tyreek Hill and I got Tua and I got two running backs that can run for 1,000 yards. You better start winning some games. You're out. Man.
I'll give Mike McDaniel credit for getting to this point in his career. This is a guy who's gone through a lot of travails in his life and overcome them, apparently, and hopefully that's still the case. Sometimes I see him and I wonder, but he's overcome substance abuse and whatnot, and got himself to the pinnacle, of the NFL coaching trees. So he's done something right in his life, and I don't root against the guy, but I just don't feel like he's a guy who's ever going to get over the top.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's talk about another coach that's not in the business anymore. He's on Get Up most of the time. Rex Ryan is one of the most interesting characters to me in football, even off the field. I just read, he said, well, he would have been the defensive coordinator of Dallas if they offered him more money. And I look at this guy, and he said he wanted to be the Jets head coach. I think he kind of painted himself in a corner there, Keith. I mean, why just say that? Why not just say, I want to be a head coach again, or I want to be defensive coordinator? I mean, open yourself up to all the options there. Why just say the Jets?
Hey, first of all, I don't think he's ever going to be a head coach in this league again. Let me start there. Second of all, yes, he talks about the Jets a lot. And now the Jets, to me, have compounded that situation because they interviewed him, didn't hire him. And now he'll spend all next year. Every time the Jets stink, he'll say, well, they could have had me. Rex Ryan is going to be talking about the Jets all next year because they didn't hire me. Guaranteed.
Yes. He did that about Zimmer when they hired him instead of Rex last year. Every time the defense stunk, it's like, wow, Zimmer is this, Zimmer is that. Dude, I guess it's good for Get Up. I don't know.
Yeah, he's right where he belongs. He's a good talker, and he gets people either pumped up or pissed off, one or the other, right? So that's what they want, and I think Rex is very good at that. So he's found his job. Yeah, and I was good. Thank you, James.
Rex had success with the Jets. Let's not forget that. They went to 2 AFC championship games. I mean, his overall record, I think, was slightly under 500, and he wasn't successful when he was a coach with the Buffalo Bills. But he did have a nice run for a couple of years with the Jets. It wasn't like he flamed out. He did a good job with them. He created some excitement. And he was an outstanding defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens when they won the Super Bowl. So you got to give Rex credit. He is a good coach. I mean, you could do a lot worse than hire Rex Ryan.
He's a good talker. I'll give you that. I wonder if
he's entertaining. No, the Jets made the right choice with Aaron Glenn. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't have wanted to run it back with Rex Ryan. It would have been like you were recycling a coach. I mean, Aaron Glenn's a nice, fresh choice. We don't know whether it's going to work out with Aaron Glenn or not. It remains to be seen. But with Rex, I mean, if I'm the Jets, if I'm Aaron Glenn and I'm getting along great with Rex, if we could have a good relationship, I wouldn't hesitate to hire Rex as my defensive coordinator for the Jets.
Oh, keep in mind, I mean, Rex was a great coordinator. Rex Ryan has not been a defensive coordinator in this league in like 20 years. I mean, you got to remember that too. And I would like to have been a wall. I would love to have been a fly on the wall during that Jet interview with Rex Ryan. It had to be very interesting. My first question was, do you still have the tattoo of Mark Sanchez, or did you have it removed? I'd like to know that answer to that.
I think Rex is his own worst enemy. That's what I think.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
And I think I mean, you sit down and I guarantee you he starts talking and he tells you how great he is and how perfect he is and how there's nobody better. And I just think that turns a lot of people off, right? I mean, tell me what you want to do with the team and that, but I don't want to hear that you're the best at everything. And I didn't like his father. I think his father was a twice better coach than he was. I think he was a big blowhard too.
I'm glad you said that.
He was a bully, was what Buddy was, a bully.
Yes, and if it wasn't for Buddy, Rex or his brother may never have gotten into the NFL. He brought him in as kids. So I mean,
Yep.
you know, and nothing against Rex. I mean, he's got a record. He was okay way back when. But again, you know, that's like Bill Cowher. I mean, are you going to bring Bill Cowher back? I don't know. You know, I don't know.
Not at this point, but Bill Cowher's window closed. But for a number of years when he wasn't coaching, he was the hottest coaching candidate because he had the big name. But when you even looked at Bill Cowher, yeah, he did win one Super Bowl and lost one. But basically, his teams mirrored Mike Tomlin's of all these years, that Mike Tomlin's teams are good enough to get to the playoffs, but they're never really a threat to win the Super Bowl.
Mike Tomlin had better quarterback up until the last couple of years than Cowher had too. Cowher did all that with Neil O'Donnell as his quarterback and Flash, so he did. That's a better coaching job to me.
Wait. Ben Roethlisberger was Cowher's quarterback when
At the end, yes, I'm saying he got to a Super Bowl with Neil O'Donnell. That should get you to the Hall of Fame all by itself.
Well, Neil O'Donnell, you know, you got to. We make fun of these guys, you know, a little bit, but they made it to the pros, so they got to be pretty damn good.
Agreed.
Keith, what do you got for your show today? And
Jim Behringer's coming on today from FullPressHockey.com. We haven't talked much hockey on my shows anyway recently, and we're going to get our audience caught up on everything going on in the NHL, and we'll talk a little bit of college football probably as well.
And Rick gives Jack another compliment. I say, Rick,
listen, I've agreed with Jack this entire show.
I think he's been on point.
This is some kind of mirror.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I accidentally stumbled into good points, Rick, today.
I think you did good.
I think I woke up in a mirror universe or something where I'm,
that's exactly what it is. Keith, have a great show. He's up right after we are, folks. So stay tuned on the Roku channel. Take care.
See you guys Sunday.
All right, buddy. There you go. Keith Angle, college, pro, it doesn't matter. He knows about all sports. So we got the NBA to talk a little bit about. A guy named Kendrick Perkins, Jack, says that Wembanyama.
Everyone knows Kendrick Perkins. What do you mean a guy named Kendrick Perkins? Former player, good NBA player.
He was a pretty good player.
And now he's in ESPN.
Is he a Hall of Famer, Jack?
No, but pretty good player.
All right. So, but he's talking about maybe a future Hall of Famer, like he's not living up to the hype now. He's he's not scoring as many points in the paint as he thinks he should because he's
you're talking about Victor Wembanyama, man.
Wemby, we call him Wemby. Or his friends call him Wemby. Yes, Wemby. So he's 7'5", and Kendrick Perkins thinks he should come away from that 3-point line, get in the paint, score more in the paint because they do have a 3-point shooter by the name of Chris Paul, which I don't think he's that great either, but I think he's a little old. But anyway, so that's Kendrick Perkins' thought on Wemby. Jack, what are your thoughts?
Wemby isn't 7'5". I forgot his exact height. He's a little over
7'3".
He's not that, yeah. And Wemby's got phenomenal ball handling skills. When the guy is that tall, we don't image him as being a ball handler. When Wembanyama could play point guard if he had to, he could play any position. He's that good. He's in his second year. He's basically a kid. And how could you criticize him? He's been fantastic. He's a generational talent. He's in his second year. He went to a terrible Spur team. And look at them now. They've improved substantially by their second year. And I think Kendrick Perkins is doing it just to get a buzz, so we could react to what he said. But Kendrick Perkins is someone of substance. That's the only reason I talk about it. If someone else mentioned it on a podcast, an unknown person, I would refuse to talk with you about this, Mac. I would just let you talk about it and I'd be silent because I'd say some idiot is trying to bring attention onto himself. But because Kendrick Perkins is someone of substance, someone I respect, I'll comment and I'll dignify, what he said by commenting on it. And no, he's flat out wrong. Wembanyama's still developing. He's a heck of a player. The Spurs are a team of the future. They will be contending for an NBA championship in 2-3 years because of Wembanyama.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said there, Jack. The Lakers put on the Celtics 117-96. Davis, leading scorer. LeBron was second with the most rebounds during the game. Porzingis led the Celtics with points. Are the Celtics – everybody says, well, they can put their foot on the gas when it comes to the playoffs. Are the Celtics just not as good as they were last year? I mean, they're not – I don't know, Jack. I mean, they're not doing what they did last year in the regular season for sure. But are they the type of team that can turn it on in the playoffs?
I don't know. Maybe they're getting a tiny bit long in the tooth. I would think not. They could just be bored. They're smart enough to know that these games don't mean that much to the ultimate goal of winning the NBA championship. And in today's NBA, you're not going to play so hard during the regular season to get home court advantage, because home court advantage only means you get one extra game on your court. Best of 7. Instead of getting 4 games on your home court, if you have home court advantage, you have 3. You could overcome that. It's not worth pushing during the regular season. So I think the Celtics kind of, in a way, I don't want to say going through the motions, but there's no urgency. They'll gladly concede the number 1 seed to the Cleveland Cavaliers, for example. So they're the number 2 seed. Eventually, they'll either get home court advantage if the Cavaliers get bumped before the Celtics would have a chance to play them, or, the Cavaliers, if it's the Cavaliers against the Celtics in the finals, it's just one extra game on Cleveland's home court. I don't think they're stressed out about that.
Do you see the rivalry between the Lakers and Boston meaning anything during the regular season yet?
It always means something because the names are magic. Just magical. Celtics, Lakers. No, not as much as in the past, because they haven't had that direct rivalry, the current players. But the names, they face one another, it gets your attention. You have the same thing in baseball. When the Yankees play the Red Sox, you do a double take, as far as looking at the box score.
Sure.
But it's not like it was during the days when, Jeter, Rivera, Posada were playing against Schilling, Pedro, Ramirez.
Sure.
It's a different era, different time, but the names always have like a certain magic to it. Like we're talking football before, the Cowboys always going to have that magic. Whatever team they go play, that city's going to say, oh, we're playing Dallas, even though it's not going to be, might not be the Dallas team, of the past that really excited us.
Sure. Real quick, we'll touch on the NHL. Let's see. Boston beat Washington 2-0. Dave Pasternak and Morgan Geekie with goal apiece. The Rangers routed the Flyers 6-0. 6 different players with a goal. Today's games on the locals, you got Jersey at the Canadiens, the Hurricanes at the Islanders. There you go. And Jack, you mentioned something we'll talk about real quick before we go off. Djokovic getting booed because he was hurt and had to stop.
Disgraceful. Semifinals of the Australian Open. He was playing for over an hour. He had a leg injury. Djokovic saw he couldn't continue anymore. They're booing him off the court. You're booing arguably the greatest tennis player of all time, who virtually never quits a match, but he's injured. Those fans at the Australian Open are an absolute disgrace. Those who booed him, they're an absolute disgrace.
No, Rick, we are going to start up the debate show again. We got some really interesting topics to talk about tomorrow. So tune in, everyone, tomorrow at 8 a.m. as we start up the debate show again. And, of course, tune in Sunday for the big football show, and maybe the big football show and more as the games are getting less and less. So tune in tomorrow, 8 a.m. Tune in Sunday, 8 a.m. Thanks for all the comments, the views, the likes, and hopefully possible shares later. We enjoy doing this every day for you guys. Well, every 3 days, 5 days counting Saturday and Sunday. So have a great night tonight.